2018, I was in a horrific car crash that should have taken my life.
A single mom of 7 survived a near-fatal car accident in 2018 and embraced the goal of a lifetime.
So when I went home to my family, everything changed for me. Like everything all of a sudden was just this magic of life.
What happened in the first expedition?
So when you climb K2, you know that 25% of the people that attempt to climb it die in its pursuit. So you're sitting there thinking, I need to get in and get out because the odds are my best if I'm only here once.
I mean, you've climbed Everest, you've climbed K2. What has this taught you about yourself? What would you say to people listening who are thinking of doing something, but in their mind it's like, yeah, but this is risky?
If you're taking on risk in one category, you need to. If I can go do this with 7 kids at home, what excuse are you trying to hide behind that maybe that barrier could be broken and you can live a life more fulfilled?
Do you ever get criticism for climbing?
Yeah.
We made it to K2 Summit. It's a lot of work. Second time trying.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show, and I am so excited to sit down with Jenn Drummond. Jenn, welcome to Born to Climb.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Perfect name of a show for me to be on, so thank you for hosting.
Well, you know, it's not a show for climbers, but yet at the same time, it's a show about, as I said earlier, you know, we're born to walk uphill, and you are actually the first climber to be on the show, so there's maybe there's an award for that, but it's nice to have you here. What I wanted to, there's so many things I want to talk about, but you were the first woman in the world to climb the second 7 summits. So first of all, just for those listening who may not be familiar even with the concept of the 7 summits, can you explain what the second 7 summits are?
Yeah, so the second summits are the second highest point on each of the 7 continents. When I was first presented this idea, I was like, why would I want to climb the second? It's like, come on, why aren't you going for the first? And my coach had said, well, listen, the first have been done by a number of people, and they're a lot easier than the seconds, which is why the seconds have only been done by 1 male, and you'll be the first female. And that got me excited.
My follow-up question to that one is, why would you want to do this?
Yeah, so it started with, like, we have to backtrack a little bit, and I had a car accident in 2018, and that car accident should have killed me, and we have no idea how it didn't kill me. The police rebuilt the accident about 50 different ways, and every scenario they built has me dying, and I walked away pretty much unscathed, which when you face death that close, like it's a line in the sand. Like life is never the same, and my life before the accident was very validation seeking, very box checking, very much like, hey, here's what it's supposed to look like, so I'm going to try to make it look like that, and da 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 da. And then after the accident, I was kind of over like whatever I had told myself it needed to look like. And I'm like, I want to know, like I want to feel, I want to experience. And so I started making this massive bucket list of things I wanted to do, see, and experience if my day was coming. And it was silly things, right? Like taste pasta in Italy and swim the Great Barrier Reef and see what some of these countries look like that I've been reading about. And I let go of all the rules and just allowed myself to play and dream and just see what happened. And as that 2019 year was coming to an end, I kind of realized, oh, in 2020, I'm turning 40. This is a big year. I should look at my bucket list and do something epic to launch that next decade of life. And so when I was looking at my list, I realized, oh, climbing a mountain is only going to get harder as if I get older. And that was one of the things. So I signed up to climb a mountain, single mountain, named Ama de Blanc. My son heard it as I'm a dumb blonde. and challenged me to climb a real mountain like Mount Everest. And I took him up on that because I'm like, yeah, I am going to climb Everest, and I'm going to show you whatever our Everest is we're capable of summiting. And then my coach upped it to this world record. And the reason why is because I told my coach, I'm like, I need to do something to show humanity that we are the cage that we put ourselves in. And I want to just do something that just doesn't make sense, but feels authentic and all this kind of stuff. And he came up with the 7-second summits. And the reason why is because it hadn't been done by a female before. 7 continents, 7 mountains. I have 7 children. So it was this jackpot of 777. And if I can go do this with 7 kids at home, what excuse are you trying to hide behind that maybe that barrier could be broken and you can live a life more fulfilled?
Now, was Ama de Blanc then the first big high altitude mountain that you did?
Yes. And I'll be honest, it's still my favorite one.
For those of you who are unfamiliar with Ama de Blanc, you've probably seen it in photos. It's one of the most iconic pictures, but it's also terrifying. Like when I look at, I've had a friend who've climbed Ama de Blanc and actually almost had a serious accident on it, but I don't think I could do it because of just my fear of heights, that it's so extreme. So what was that like for you to make that your first high altitude climb?
I'm so glad it was, because I was so clueless, right? Like, and what happens with Ama de Blanc is you burn bridges. Like, you can't go back. Like, once you hit this certain point, going back's not an option, because you go back a little bit of a different way. So you have to keep going forward. And I am so grateful, like, that was my option, was going forward or waiting forever for a helicopter rescue, because I have a fear of heights. And I didn't really, I mean, I can ride a chairlift, I can look outside of a skyscraper and not get too woozy. But when all of a sudden I'm on this like razor sharp edge and there's a 2,000-foot drop on either side of me, I mean, I'm sweating and swallowing my heart to get it back into my body and all these different things. But because I had to go forward, it made me realize, like, we sell ourselves short so many times. We are so much more capable than what we think. And when you're put like pedal to the metal, like you can metal up. You got it.
What has this journey of all the mountains that you've climbed, and you've done so many, I mean, you've climbed Everest, you've climbed K2, we'll get to that one in just a moment. You've climbed a lot of these mountains and in a very short period. What has this taught you about yourself?
Oh, I think every mountain kind of reveals a new layer of awareness, acceptance, surrender. Like, it's so fun to find yourself in these environments and like take on whatever comes, and you can predict, but you like the only thing you really can do is prepare, because like something's going to change or go or whatever. And that's actually the beauty of it, because if we knew how it was all going to go, just we'd be bored and we wouldn't be interested. I mean, I think about my kids playing video games. When they've mastered the game, they don't want to touch it anymore. They want a game that has that surprise element or that awe element or that wonder element. And you get all of that in the mountains. So it's addicting 100%. But who you come home as is never the same person you leave as. And I haven't found another venue to have that experience. And so I love it.
There's a quote, I'll try to bring it up before we leave here, but a friend had showed me, and basically the essence of the quote was, when you go to the top of a mountain, you can't stay there, so why do it in the first place? And the quote goes on to basically say, because once you've climbed, then you will never see life, at the base camp in the same way again. It shifts how you see the world, which can only happen as if you ascended to that. So I think it's a cool quote.
Definitely.
Of all the mountains you've climbed, which is the most meaningful to you?
Oh, it's like picking a favorite child. You know, like it's interesting. I love all mountains for different stories, but today, whatever reason it's hitting me, is Mount Tyree is in Antarctica, and it's the second highest point there. And that one was a fascinating climb because, one, Antarctica is fascinating, but two, it hadn't been climbed that often. In fact, the North Face team went the year before, or 2 years before, didn't summit. COVID was the year before. So we were this first team back, and there hadn't been success in a while. And we were, I think, number 15 through 20 in the summiters. That just hasn't been summited that often. And it's a really, really steep mountain and dangerous mountain. So your summit push is 18 to 36 hours. Before we had done it, it was 24 to 36. We had a budget for that. And you need to drink enough water and eat enough food so you have enough fuel to go. But if you drink too much or eat too much, it pulls blood from your fingers to digest the food. So then you risk frostbite. And like, it's just this game of knowing yourself and what can you do and all these things. And then you come up to these like handwritten notes that someone gave us before. And you're like, okay, is that rock under snow this year? Did it roll down the mountain? Did we take a wrong turn? Like, all of that is just, you are so present. And when we woke up for the summit push, I unzipped my tent. It's light 24/7 there because we're going during the summer of Antarctica, which is January. And you look out, you see nothing, right? Just pristine wilderness. And you don't even see that many colors because it's Antarctica. So you have a blue sky, white snow, like a yellow sun, and then some rock. There's no orange, there's no green, there's no red, there's just no, like, so there's such a sensory deprivation. And I just remember waking up thinking, if I would have been born when my mom or my grandma were born, this wasn't in the realm of possibility, like 0% chance. My family or my ancestors or the generations before had no clue what I'd be interested in or what I'd be trying to do or what I'd be trying to accomplish. But the things that we do as a society today make a tomorrow possible that we can't even comprehend. And I think that's so invigorating and so empowering of like, do your thing, whatever it is, because it matters. And so I climbed that mountain with so much pride for humankind. Like, look where we came, look what we're doing, this is amazing. I'm the second female ever on this mountain, first non-climber, like, right? And it was just a day of awe. Like, life is magic when we let it be.
One of the things that I love about your story is that you're continuing to write, is that you're doing some really amazing things, but you have 7 children, all at home, and you run your own business. I think a lot of people want to do something great, right? They want to do something, but that's the word that comes after that is, my job, my family, whatever. What do you say to people, especially when you're speaking on stage and you're trying to inspire them to think bigger about their life, but yet at the same time, they are thinking, well, I would do that if I didn't have X, Y, Z?
Yeah, we all have ifs and buts and all that kind of stuff, but I have found where power and alignment, integrity, and all these different places come together is when we are where our feet are. So when I'm with my kids, I am with my kids. So when you're that focused and intentional and present, time like loses factors. It doesn't even make sense, right? And so then when I'm in my business mode and I know the kids are taken care of and I know my workout's going to happen, like I can just be in business mode and I can get it done. When I'm on the mountain and I know the business is being taken care of and I know my kids are taken care of, like my job is to live in this moment and make the most of this spot right here because that's where I selected to be. And when you learn to be where your feet are, you get so much more done, and because you're so much more present and involved and aware of that piece.
Absolutely. I want to ask about K2. Yeah. K2, I know that you didn't climb it on your first attempt. It took you 2 attempts. For those who are listening, K2 is arguably one of the most dangerous mountains in the world. It's more difficult than climbing Mount Everest, which a lot of people have, begun to do. K2 is still that mountaineer's mountain. And so walk us through the first time. First of all, I'm guessing K2 because it was part of the list of the second 7 summits. But obviously you knew going into that, the risks that took. What happened in the first expedition?
Yeah. So when you climb K2, you know that 25% of the people that attempt to climb it die in its pursuit. So you're sitting there thinking, I need to get in and get out because the odds are my best if I'm only here once. If I'm here twice, that's not like looking as favorable. So when I went in 2021, it was me really forcing and pushing that expedition at a lot of levels. That was just when COVID was ending, so a lot of Sherpa and a lot of teams didn't end up coming to K2. And one thing that's true in all pursuits, big mountains, big goals take big teams. So we're climbing this huge mountain with not a lot of resources. Just little like cues along the way. We're kind of like, this isn't looking good. This isn't looking good. But I kept blowing through them because I'm like, oh, it's mountaineering. Like that's part of it, blah, 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 blah. And then one of my teammates died in an avalanche. And when my teammate died in an avalanche, that was a huge wake-up call to me. And I had a choice to continue climbing or turn around. And I'm done. Like, I'm turning around. This was like, I can't even believe this happened. I need to help my teammate. The mountain will always be here. And I need to just reevaluate summit fever's real. And what are my boundaries and what am I willing to take on and not? And where are my hard stops? Because that was a bad choice on a number of levels. And I'm grateful that I'm here to talk about it because I could have been where that teammate was. The only reason why I wasn't is because I was super fit and there wasn't enough tent space at the camp that everybody was at. So they volunteered me to go a day ahead. So instead of sleeping at Camp 1, I skipped Camp 1 and hiked all the way up to Camp 2 in one day. And they all stayed at Camp 1 and they were on the mountain a little bit too early in the morning and the avalanche got them and I came back down and it was hard. Like because they took a mountaineer that was 68 years old, has won 1 million awards in mountaineering and was married to the mountains. It wasn't like all the normal excuses you would make up were not excuses that were valid. You had to realize that this guy was married to the mountains. He died doing his favorite thing. And there's some honor in that, climbing one of the deadliest mountains in the world. Like this could happen. And so that next year I trained for the entire year and just really did some mindset work and really was, what's the purpose of this? What am I doing? What does it look like if I want to come home again? It is okay to climb this mountain 3 times if I'm not feeling good. I just gave myself a ton of permission on the front end. And when I went back the second time, I was much more spiritual about it. I was very much, okay, mountain, do you want us to climb you? How many teams are here? What's everybody doing? I was just so much more experienced as a mountaineer to be able to even weigh in and understand what was going on. And in 2022, we summited, and so did a whole bunch of other people, and the situation was entirely different. And I'm grateful for the experience, but it's like building a business. It's a deadly game out there. The number of people that survive over the long haul the odds are not in your favor.
On that note, do you ever get criticism for climbing?
Yeah, a lot of criticism. A lot. And I think everybody has to, because they look at it from their perspective, right? And their experiences and their lens. What for me, I have seen a handful of people die in the mountains. I've also seen a girlfriend die running on a trail when it was raining. She slipped, hit her head on a rock, and didn't come home. I've seen, death shows up when it shows up, and I'm just the believer that wherever you are, when it's your time, it's your time. If you want to be sitting on the sofa and it's your time, you're going to die. If you want to be on a mountain and it's your time, you're going to die. And so the point isn't to try to control death. The point is to make the most out of life.
I know that even, male climbers get criticized, especially on some of the more dangerous mountains, but there seems to be an unfair criticism that's put on women, especially if they have kids. I have 2 daughters. They like to climb. I see them more and more getting into it, which makes me nervous, of course. But I also know that with that, there seems to be a bit of unfair judgment that's put on them that's not put on men.
Yeah, that's 100. I have been on a number of expeditions and everybody asks well, who's watching your kid? And I'll have male counterparts on the same team that have children. No one asks about how are your kids being cared for or what's going on. But I don't see it as a bad thing. I see that at least they have the courage to ask, and now it's a conversation, and that awareness allows for change to happen. So if I'm one of the catalysts for change, I'm here for it.
Going back to your car accident, a lot of people will have a near-death experience, and then there's a serious time of reevaluation. And then it seems that all of a sudden their life actually opens up because they start thinking differently. They start evaluating, like, is this the path that I want to go down for all of my life?
Yeah.
And then they start almost like a reinvention of themselves. And it sounds like that's been similar for you. What would you say to someone who's listening to this podcast right now and they're thinking about, I'd love to do something more, but I'm just, they're just kind of in the routine of life, wondering how practical that is. Of course, they don't have to go and climb a mountain, but
Right.
we don't need a car crash either for us to really begin to think about our life. So if someone came to you and you were coaching them, how would you approach that? What would you say to them?
Yeah. So I made the car wreck a line in the sand for me. Like, that's a story I wrote about that experience. Like, here's a before and after for me. This is very clear and easy. You have to be willing to write that story. And it doesn't have to be a car. It could be a birthday. It could be Friday the 13th. It could be the new year or whatever. You'll be like, this is who I'm going to be. This is who this person is that I want to be. And I'm going to start doing things to show up as that person. Like, when I decided to climb mountains, I hadn't slept in a tent before. So I had Jenn today, and then I created this avatar of who Jenn needed to be safe on these mountains. And every day I just tried to close that gap. And how do I become avatar mountaineer Jenn? And I think when we are serious about something, it's what we're taught in business. Put a deadline on it. Like, okay, I'm climbing Everest. I'm leaving on this date, so I need to be ready. So we're backing into it for right now. And what does this look like? And how does that happen? And I truly think when we have the courage to be authentic, that energy shows and the world works with you to make it happen. Like, it's not as hard of a lift as it looks like from the outside, because it's that little click and then everything goes and falls into place.
When I saw your website, I was reading your book and I saw your website and I saw just the amount of mountains you'd climbed. I honestly thought, oh, you've been climbing for 20 years. So when you told me just how recent this was, I was already impressed, but I was quite shocked actually that you'd done so much in so little time, which punctuates the idea that you really can shift the direction in your life quickly if you have that intention. I like the concept where you said, I just created a new avatar for my life, kind of mountaineering Jenn, and began to close the gap. Mm-hmm. When you think about, let me ask this question. What was the most difficult time you've ever had on a mountain?
Oh, two experiences come to mind. I'll just do the most recent one. I was just in Western Papua. Western Papua is in Indonesia. Even though there's 7 continents, there's actually a debate on what is a continent and how do we divide these out. So Indonesia, by most people's account, is considered part of Asia. By some people's account, it's considered part of Australia. If it's part of Australia, the second highest point is in Indonesia instead of Australia. Indonesia, the island that hosts this island that I was climbing, has been under civil war since 2017 and has been closed to foreigners to be able to climb because of the civil war. And then we got notice a couple weeks ago that, hey, they think it's going to open. I'm like, okay, perfect. So we booked flights, we flew there, and then we were on aggressive standby, which meant every morning at 6 a.m., because it's by the equator, so 6 a.m. is when the sun rises, you would check in and be like, hey, can we go to the mountain today? And they're like, no, not today. We found a dead body at the mountain, or the chief of police was killed, or the helicopter pilot's sick, or the weather's bad, so we can't fly over the jungle, because you could only fly into this mountain range between 6 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. every day. After that, too much moisture came up from the jungle that you had to fly over, which caused clouds, which mean it wasn't safe to climb or fly, because the helicopters are only allowed to fly under visual reference. So you have that happen for 2 to 3 days, and you're like, okay, but every single day it happens, you're moved to a new hotel. You're moved to a new hotel room. You have to change security. You have to do everything. They don't want you to establish any pattern whatsoever so somebody can try to have a problem. Because the reason why this island is under this civil unrest is the largest gold mine in the world is located there, owned by a U.S. company. And so there's just a dispute on really who owns it and who gets to control it and all the assets that go with it and all the drama. And so I had to be in hiding. I did that for 16 days. This mountain hadn't been open for 7 years. And so you're sitting there thinking, like, is this really going on? Like, your brain starts playing tricks on you. Or are they just pretending to make me look safe? And like, there's more people coming in and they're going to like grab me and steal me and keep me hostage. And I'm going to have to ask the US, which this is a category 4 area to travel to. You're not supposed to go. You know, like all your mind just goes bonkers. So it wasn't even the climb. It was everything involved with the climb and all the story that was being written. And so when we finally landed, I land with this helicopter and you have these guys running with like AK-47s towards you. You're like, okay, are they good guys? Are they bad guys? Like, I don't even know. And they kept a perimeter of the base camp. There was a handful of them 24/7, and we landed. We had 15 minutes till we were allowed to start running up the mountain because that helicopter would have signaled people that we landed. So we needed to climb as fast as we could. And we had to go past Rebels territory and all this stuff. So it was fine. It worked out. I'm home. I'm here. But I don't mind mountain risk. It's people risk that is just a little, I mean, it was mind numbing.
That sounds like something right out of a James Bond film.
I know. I'm like, real life? Like, who came up? Like, is someone following a script and I didn't get it? Like, can I see the script, please?
You know, I think one of the things a lot of people may not realize with mountaineering expeditions, especially high altitude mountaineering expeditions, is the amount of logistics. And there's just a certain grind that it takes, not even the mountain itself, but just the grind to make it happen, to get in there. Like you said, it's amazing how many people it takes to just get a few people up a mountain. It's
ridiculous, right? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it is. How do you keep your mindset in it when you feel like you want to quit? Because again, it's one thing for people to all of a sudden think, hey, you know what? Yeah, let me do something with my life. Let me create a line in the stand. Let me create a new avatar for me, a reinvention, and then begin to go towards it. Almost, you know, New Year's resolutions would be a miniature version of all this. But at some point, we run into the headwind and we get to that place where we think, I don't know if I can do this. How does Jenn Drummond handle those moments?
I mean, this is going to sound like the craziest thing you've ever heard, but I'm just going to be honest with it. I went to Mexico and I saw the Mayan ruins, and they show you these places and they're like, yeah, this was built in like 15 whatever, and this was built in 16 whatever. And they show you like people would lay bricks and do things and never get to see the final product. But whatever they were working on was making a dent in what the final product would be. And so for me, whenever it gets overwhelming or exhausting, or I'm just like, why am I paying to do this? Like, what is mentally wrong with me? I connect back to my why of human potential and possibility. And it's like, hey, even if I don't make it to the top, I'm pushing that brick a little bit further. And that matters for the next person. It might not mean I get to the top, but my work and my effort and my everything is not for naught. Like, it's just, that's where my story was supposed to end, and somebody gets to pick it up from there. And the further I can take it, the easier it is for them and the further they can go.
And do you have it? So, and that's where you go when you, let's say you're on the middle of a mountain, you're exhausted, and you just think, I just want to go down.
Just like one more brick. I'm just like, one more brick. If I can do one more brick, I know it's going to make a difference for somebody. Just one more brick, or one more step, right? Like, but I literally am just thinking like, just one more. And then what happens is you get lost in that pattern of thought of one more. And then eventually your brain switches to another story, and then you start going, like, it's amazing how many stories start trying to be written by our brains. And you just have to interject and be like, okay, that story's not serving me. I'm going to just do one more. And then eventually you get some momentum, and now you have a whole new story coming on that you never even saw.
And then as you do that, you're writing a new story for yourself, which then serves you in the future.
Yeah.
I'm always humbled by what comes out of me on the side of a mountain. And it's usually like the not good stuff. And I know I think you climbed Mount Sahama in Bolivia.
Yeah.
Did you climb Mount Sahama? So in one of my keynotes, I share that story, which Mount Sahama would be very tame compared to many of the mountains that you've done. But I
But
was
it's a
so
mental
exhausted.
slog. It's a mental slog, that one.
It was a mental slog, and we hadn't melted enough water the night before, so, and our stove wasn't working, so we didn't really have adequate water, and we just up we went. And I joke about this in one of my keynotes, but it was very true. I got to a point where I wanted to quit, but I didn't want to be the one to quit, because then literally there was only 3 of us left. We would all have to go down. And then I began thinking, oh, I hope this other guy quits, because if he quits, then I get to go down. And that was literally my thinking. And it wasn't until we summited and I got back down that I remember asking, like, what was wrong with me? Like, why were you thinking like that? Right? And so it wasn't even like this positive experience in that moment, but of course you learn so many lessons about yourself when you push yourself to the limit. It doesn't have
Yeah,
to be on
you
a mountain.
surprise yourself, right? Like how you show up or how you respond. Like, I'll be honest with you, I'm shocked. I mean, I'm shocked in that moment when that guy died on K2 that I turned around, because there was so much of I spent so much money and so much time, and I had the kids figured out and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, and the guy's dead. Like that story's done. Whether we bury him today or in 2 days from now, it's not going to change his narrative, but it changes mine. I mean, and I wrestled with that for a little bit, and then I chose to go down, and I'm proud of myself that I did. But the car wreck Jen before wouldn't have. Like before the car wreck, I would have been like, I'm here to get to the top, and I don't care who I bulldoze in the process. And then after the car wreck, I was like, actually, we're here for each other. Like, that's the purpose of life, is to support one another, add value to one another, and help one another up these mountains. And so it doesn't matter if I get to the top. It matters if I help everybody else through this process, because in helping them, I'm helping me. And I mean, you just, like, when you're on the mountains, you, like, what shows up shocks you, for sure.
I like that about we're here to help each other out. Of course, there's no shortage of stories of, especially on Everest, of people just, not helping someone out and going for the summit. Of course, there's also stories of where, like, people don't understand until they get up there that sometimes you can't help somebody out
Right.
at the risk of your own life. So it can be a complicated issue. What would you say? I want to talk a little bit about managing risk, because this is obviously something you do. Not everyone who's listening is going to climb a dangerous mountain, but it doesn't mean that they're not going to do things that are risky. So maybe they want to start a business. Maybe they're tired of working in the job and they think, oh, I'd like to do my own thing, but that's risk, right? It's a financial risk. Maybe it's a risk to their family. What would you say to people listening who are thinking of doing something, but in their mind, it's like, yeah, but this is risky?
Yeah. I was an investment manager, right? So for me, it was all about managing risk. And when you had a solid foundation, you are willing to take risks with a portion of your portfolio, but not your entire portfolio. So one, when you're taking risk, you have to be really honest with what your risk tolerance is and what helps your risk tolerance. So like if I was going to go climb Everest and my house is in mayhem, the kids weren't covered, the business wasn't going to do what, like, there's no way I could be present at Mount Everest and climb that mountain, because I had risk in every category of my life. So if you're taking on risk in one category, you need to neutralize or remove risk in other categories to get to a level that's comfortable for you, because we all know when we're in risky situations and we're reaching, that's bad energy to do anything from. So what do you need to do personally to always be coming from center and grounded and not already be out on the limb trying to reach? And I think that just really helps you set up things. So for example, when I'm out of town, like the kids are covered, the business is covered, there's cash in the checking account, like everything is conservative. I have all the wills done, and I wrote letters to the kids in case they don't come home. And like, I have so many things covered and taken care of that it allows me to feel confident in what I'm doing and assess the situation I'm at, because everything else is taken care of. So if you're going to take a career risk, or you're going to take a relationship risk, or you're going to do something, like, ask yourself, where can you minimize risk in other parts of your life so that you have stability to operate from?
You're actually the first person that's ever said that, at least that I've ever heard, this concept of if you're going to take risks somewhere else, then make sure you're not taking risk in a bunch of other places. Like make sure those things are locked down so you can give your full attention to this. That's brilliant.
Thank you, asset management. Don't put all your eggs in that like little .com. Like give it your little, like not everything needs to be crypto just because it's running right now. So.
What impact do you hope to have on your kids
Oh,
with the climbing?
you know, I took 3 of my kids climbing. We went to Kilimanjaro together. So they were really interested in what I was doing. And I'm like, okay, where's a safe mountain that I can let them have an amazing experience? So I took my 3 oldest, 17, 15, and 14, to climb the roof of Africa. Amazing experience for them and for me to share that passion and to let them see what it looks like and what it feels like when you're on fire because you're doing you. And if I can demonstrate, like, this is mom, and I'm so excited about life, and I have this challenge, and yes, it requires all this out of me that I don't necessarily love, but it's worth the end result, so here we go, that gives them permission to find it in themselves, whatever it looks like. Like, I have a 12-year-old that is a diehard DJ that will tell me, hey, mom, do you feel that? I'm like, I wish I felt music, but I love it that you do. Like, keep owning that part of you, buddy, right? So I think as a parent, the best gift we can give our kids is a demonstration of what it looks like to live life fulfilled. And then it leaves clues for them to figure out how to find that for themselves.
Yeah, I love that. I was living in the Canadian Rockies, and when my kids were smaller, and I took my 2 oldest, I can't remember how old they were at the time, like 6 and 3 or 7 and 4. And I went with a couple other buddies, and we were going to hike up to this ice cave. And it was May, so I thought, oh, this should be safe. But literally, we got 3/4 way up, and then just this blizzard came in. And, you know, we got to the cave, and it was safe there, but we still had to descend. And coming down was a bit dicey. And I remember thinking to myself, like, you are a terrible parent in this moment, right? Now, it wasn't like anything that anyone was going to die, but it was scary. And it was interesting. A couple of weeks ago, I went to visit my oldest daughter, and I asked her, can you think of a day in your life as a kid that stands out among all others that it was a favorite memory? And she brought up that day, and she didn't get even all the details right. She just like, we were on some mountain and it was snowing, but that made me smile because that was a profound
So
impact.
good, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. I love that for you guys.
So as we close out here, I know that you speak on stage a lot. If there's, let's say somebody wanted you to give a keynote, but time got cut, as sometimes happens to us, especially if the CEO is speaking before us, right? Choose up the time. And suddenly you're down to 5 minutes. That happened to me once. You're down to 5 minutes, and you can really only say one thing. What are you going to tell the audience?
I'm going to tell them to do them. Like, be kind to yourself is probably the biggest message I give people. Being kind to ourselves makes us stronger. We seem to be our own worst critic. We seem to be our own worst enemy. We seem to just fight against ourselves. The world's hard enough. When you learn how to support yourself and honor yourself and really cherish this gift of life, you're untouchable, like unstoppable. So if there's anything I can teach people is being kind to yourself makes you stronger.
Love it. Jenn, if people want to get a hold of you, maybe to have you come in and speak at their organization, what's the best way?
Yeah. So please check out jenndrummond.com. I'm on all social platforms. And then if you're listening today, if you text the word Everest to the number 33777, you're going to get a video of the Milky Way galaxy going over Everest Base Camp. It's like 20 seconds or something. I keep it on my phone in my favorites because when life gets hard or overwhelming or I start writing a story that doesn't serve me, I look at that little video and just remind myself, like, this life is a gift. My problems are not that big. Like, enjoy, find happiness, live that out. And so I want to share that with you. When you do get that video, you will be in our email system and kind of get updates of what I'm doing and what's going on.
So we'll have all that in the show notes. If you're driving and you're like, wait, I missed that, we'll have that in the show notes. You can go to jamesrobbins.com/podcast, look up Jenn Drummond's episode. But just to repeat that, that's to text pound 33777.
Yeah, you're just going to go Everest to 33777. So in your phone, go 33777, type in the word Everest. It's going to give you a cue. It's going to send you the video, and you're welcome.
Got it. I'm going to do it right when we're done this interview. Also, your new book has come out this year, Break Proof. I'm just starting it, so I can't ask you more questions about that, but I'm just starting that and enjoying the stories. It's got a lot of great reviews, and for those of you, we'll have that link as well in the show notes to Jenn's new book, Break Proof. That's your second book, I think, isn't it?
No, it's actually my first book. I'm working on the second book. So Break Proof, 7 Strategies to Build Resilience and Achieve Your Life Goals. It's very businessy. So I take you to the mountain, teach you a story in a black and white situation, and help you apply it to your business or your personal life. This next book is more of the emotional pieces and what was going on like mentally to get through some of the challenges. We cut quite a bit on the first book, so we're putting it in a second one.
So yeah, get a copy of Break Proof. I've been going through it, and one of the things I love is that at the end of the chapters, you have like a ton of takeaways. It's not just like, here's the one point. I mean, you just have a lot of great practical stuff in there, and so cheers to that amazing job with the book. I want to close out and just say something to you personally. Oh, and one more thing. Make sure you check out Jenn's social media. I'm only connected with you on LinkedIn, but the content you put out is amazing. It's inspiring. Some of the photos are just fantastic. Really, really amazing. But I did want to say to you, it's been a privilege to cross paths with you and to see someone who has gone through a difficult time, reinvented herself, reinvented her life. And at the same time, like, it's not like you have this easy path where, you have no responsibilities in life. You're a business owner. You're raising 7 children. We didn't even get into that. I had 3, and I can't imagine having 7. Raising 7 children, and yet you're living your life. And to me, that's one of the best things we can do for our kids is live our life so that it gives them permission to live theirs, because so much of society wants to tell us how we're supposed to live, what we're supposed to do, what we're supposed to value, and you're showing to them and to others. So I think for my daughters, I already told one of my daughters, oh, you got to go check out Jenn Drummond, because I want my daughters to be inspired, and you're somebody who's going to inspire them. I know that. So thank you. You've inspired me today. And Jenn, I really appreciate the time.
Oh, thank you.